So we did offering obeisances yesterday,
Ofrecimos nuestras reverencias
and
ayer
I'm going to show you what you're not supposed to do.
y les voy a mostrar lo que no deben de
See
hacer.
this devotee going to sleep?
Ven este devotee
Can you see him in the mirror? Can you see in the mirror?
Ya, ¿sí lo ves?
No.
You see?
No
Don't go to sleep when you pay
se
obeisances.
duerman cuando den sus reverencias.
It's not bona fide.
No es espiritual.
You might take birth as a bear in your next life.
Puede que tome el nacimiento como un oso en la siguiente vida.
Yes, it's true.
Es verdad.
Okay. Okay, so we had our controversial discussion about full obeisances for men and women. We came up with no conclusions other than if you don't want to get a stick in your head, ladies, don't do it.
La conclusión de lo de las mujeres es que si no quieren tener un palo en la cabeza, mejor
Okay, now
nada más completo.
we had discussed that in ISKCON, it's not the fashion these days for women to pay full obeisances
Estos días que las mujeres dan sus dandadas
in ISKCON temples.
en los templos.
So we talked about offering obeisances, and you offer obeisances when you see another devotee, especially senior devotee, and then if they didn't see you, then when they see you, you offer again. Okay? And if they're eating, don't offer obeisances, or they're engaged in something that would inconvenience them, then don't offer obeisances in the mud, unless you're really into it. Now, there was supposed to be a section on offering respects, but I don't see it. So we'll talk a little bit about how we deal with different devotees. So it said with the younger devotees, you should show mercy. And you should show friendship to your peers, your equals, and you should show respect to your superiors. And so then the question is, well, how do I know who's superior, who's equal, and who's junior, or less? Because if I'm puffed up, I'll think everybody's less. And if I'm humble, I'll think everyone's better. So, in terms of seniority, there is a standard, maybe not so much well known, but the standard is based on your initiation date, not when you move in the temple, and not your age. But all that can be considered. But if you wanted a strict standard, that would be the standard. Who's senior is by initiation date. But there's a story, interesting story, that one devotee sat in front of another devotee, and he had his back to the other devotee, and it was during a darshan. And Prabhupada said, this devotee you put your back to is your senior. He was initiated before you. That's disrespectful. So sometimes in assemblies you have to know who's senior, who's junior, just to show proper etiquette. Who to offer the ghee lamp to. Say, Prabhu, what date were you initiated? What date were you initiated? Okay. Do you have any proof? Okay, I'll give it to you. So it's not that detailed, but that's general idea, that you offer to the seniors first. And respect is always given to seniors. Now, we had discussed this before, that I think a few months ago, the idea of respecting a position, like a father is a position, a teacher is a position, a king is a position, a guru is a position. So the question comes up, but what if the king or the guru or the teacher or the father or the mother is not worthy of respect? So there's respect to the person and respect to the position. So sometimes Prabhupada said you can respect the position without being intimate with the person. And he gave the example. When the devotees first went to India, I believe it was in Vrindavan, then we did offering obeisances yesterday. So what do you do? Because I'm going to show you what you're not supposed to do. Pay obeisances to sannyasis, but they're Mayavadis. See this devotee going to sleep? So Prabhupada said you can pay obeisances. Can you see him in the mirror? From a distance. See in the mirror? Just don't associate. But you're respecting the sannyas order. You see? Don't go to sleep when you pay obeisances. Prabhupada wrote letters to political figures. Not bona fide. He would address them by their titles. You might take birth as a bear in your next life. We respect the position. Doesn't mean that I respect the actions of the person, but there's an etiquette there. Okay. So, this person's your teacher. Okay. So we had our controversial discussion about a Brahmin, full obeisances for men and women. So he's not ideal. Came up with no conclusions. Other than you're going to school, so if you don't want to get a stick in your head, ladies, don't surrender to him. In modern culture, many countries, they don't respect their teachers. Okay, now in India, you respect your teacher. We had discussed that in ISKCON. Respect that he's your teacher. He's teaching you chemistry or something. It's not the fashion these days for women to pay full obeisances. So whenever that question is there, but what if my father, mother, teacher, this or that is not respectable? So from a distance. So we talked about offering obeisances. I don't listen to what they tell me to do, because what they're telling me to do is not obeisances when you see another devotee, faith, because especially senior devotee, and then if they didn't see you, then when they see you, offer again. He's the king. Okay? So there's some respect there. That's the idea. And if they're eating, don't offer obeisances, or they're now engaged in something that would inconvenience them. Prabhupada says that we should offer, and don't offer obeisances our mercy in the mud. And you might think, well, what mercy really do I have to offer some junior? I'm a mercy case myself. Now, I need mercy. There's supposed to be a section on offering respect. No, but mercy also means affection. And you know something, they don't know, so you help them. So Prabhupada we'll talk a little bit about how we deal with different devotees. If you know something more than someone else, so it's said with the younger devotees, because you're a little further ahead of them. So guru means friendship to your peers, their equals. So if somebody comes, they're younger than you, respects to your superiors. That's showing mercy. Then the question is, so the idea is that affection comes from higher to lower, who's equal, and respect goes from lower to higher. Who's junior? So the duty of the higher, because if I'm puffed up, I'll think everybody's the lower. So the higher doesn't say, I'll think who cares about them? They're just idiots. In terms of seniority, there is a standard there, this or that. Maybe not so much well known. You always give affection. But the standard is based on your initiation date. That was Prabhupada's example. Because you see, we were rascals, and we were stupid, and not your age. But all that can be considered. But he didn't give up on us. If you wanted a strict because he didn't give up on us, then who was senior by initiation date. But there's a story. So he had faith. Interesting story. We didn't really have a whole lot of faith in one devotee sat in front of another through his faith and his back to the other tolerance of us and his endlessly during a darshan. That mercy worked. So that's the superior always is giving mercy. This devotee you put your back to is your senior. He was initiated. The disciple, the student may or may not follow, but he always gives it. He just gives and gives. So sometimes in assemblies you have to know who's senior, who's junior. Reject his instructions, he'll keep giving it, even if they can't follow it. The Prophet said they're more encouraged when they follow. Who to offer when the student follows, naturally the teacher's encouraged. But that's the position of the superior. What date were you initiated? No matter what. What date were you initiated? So that's Prabhupada's example. You have any proof? Never stopped giving, no matter what problems there were in ISKCON. He never stopped. So it's not that detailed, but that's general idea. No matter how bad we were, he never stopped giving. As long as we were willing to listen, he would speak. Right? And respect is always given. So then the junior to seniors, now their duty is to hear and follow. We had discussed this before, that I think a few months ago, the idea you serve your teacher, respecting a position. In the Bhagavad Gita, sevaya, like a father is the guru, and do sevaya, teacher is a position, a king is a down like a stick, a guru is do service and then inquire. And then because you're doing service, the question comes up,
you
what if the
understand
king
what's being
or the
said.
guru or the
You don't
teacher
do
or the
service, you
father
don't understand.
or the mother
That's why
is not
Krishna
worthy of
says
respect?
sevaya.
So there's respect to the person and respect to the position.
Not just asking.
So sometimes Prabhupada said you can
questions
respect, then the guru
The
speaks,
position, and you don't do
without
anything.
No, but being intimate with the
You're
person.
willing to render service.
And he gave the example.
That makes it perfect.
When the
and then
devotees
you
first went
understand.
to India,
that's
I believe it was
that's
in
the attitude
Vrindavan.
of the junior.
Then there were Mayavadi sannyasis, but they were sannyasis.
Serve the teacher.
So what
you
do
in
do?
India, you
Because
go into a class.
Shastra says you should.
You're just visiting a
to
class. All the
sannyasis,
kids
but
will
they're
stand
Mayavadis.
up. That's
So
just the
Prabhupada said
culture.
you can pay obeisances from a distance.
They don't even know you.
Just,
You're just
don't
like-
associate.
you're
but
just an adult
you're paying. You're
coming to visit their
respecting the
class.
sannyas order. Sometimes in India, I would just walk into a class. You could
I
see
thought it was
sometimes when Prabhupada wrote
Be in
letters
some village
to
I'd be
political
looking in the
figures,
window, and I'd go, "Come in,"
he would
and I'd
address
walk
them
in.
by their
They'd all
titles,
stand
your
up.
honorable chief minister. So we respect the position. Doesn't
That's
mean
the,
that
you
I
know,
respect
that's
the
culture.
actions of
Serve
the
your
person. But
teacher.
there's an
That's the
etiquette there.
culture.
Honor your
So, you
teacher,
know,
like in my daughter's school.
This
they have a big
person's your
festival
teacher
on the school principal's
birthday.
but he's not a
The
Brahmin.
whole school
by-
stops
He's
and
not a
they
perfect
just
Brahmin, so he's not
do
ideal.
dances and dramas and cook a feast.
You're going to
and
school, so you respect your
eulogies.
teacher, but it doesn't mean
But that's
you
the culture.
surrender to him. You
In
serve
modern
the
cultures.
superiors. Many countries they don't respect
And
their teacher.
everyone has a superior and everyone has a junior.
But
So
in India,
everybody's
you respect
serving
your
and
teacher.
everyone's giving mercy.
Even if he's
Right?
a debauchee, you just respect that he's your teacher. He's teaching
Unless
you
you're
chemistry.
1
or
day
something.
old, like that.
Or 1 second old, you don't
That's
have a
the
junior.
idea.
But so
When you
whenever
become
that
a
question
devotee,
is there, but what if
after a
my
little while,
father,
someone
mother,
else comes after
teacher,
you,
this or
then
that,
they're
it's
your
not
junior,
respectful.
and then
So
you
from a
help them.
distance. I don't listen to what they tell me
Yes.
to do because what they're telling
So
me to
that's
do
the
is not
idea.
proper. Or I don't have faith because
And then
their
you
actions are not
befriend your
proper.
equals.
But still, he's the king. So then Prabhupada explains what's the problem. So there's some respect.
The
there.
problem is that
the idea.
material tendency will be with juniors is to exploit them.
Now, Prabhupada says that
equals to outdo
we
them.
should offer
And because you
our
become envious of
mercy.
equals because they're getting ahead.
You might think, well, what mercy do
we
I
both
have
joined
to
at the
offer
same
some
time,
junior?
and so and so is taking sannyas.
I'm a mercy
and
case
I can
myself.
Hardly finish my rounds.
I need mercy.
We could become envious rather than happy.
No,
that
but
they're
mercy
advancing.
also means
We could
affection.
Become envious.
You know something they don't know.
And then naturally with superiors,
So
you
Prabhupada
disrespect
said,
them.
he said,
Which is very
if you know
common in
something
Western
more than
culture.
someone else, then you're their guru.
It's
You
the
can be
signature of Western culture.
because you're a little further ahead.
This is how you know you landed
So
in the
because
West.
guru
If
means
they
teacher.
blindfolded you and you got on an
So you
airplane,
can be their guru.
and you didn't know where you
So
were.
Somebody comes, they're
when
younger
you got
than
out of the airplane.
You
just
help
see
them.
how
That's showing
you just
mercy.
see how seniors are
So the idea is
dealt
that
with, and you know
affection
if
comes
you're in
from
the East
higher
or
to
you're in the
lower,
West.
and respect goes from lower to higher.
But yesterday, well, we had
So
a
the
program.
duty of the higher
we had a program
is to
Sunday.
give mercy
It's
to
really
the
nice.
lower.
We're in Mexico here.
So
And then we
the
serve
higher doesn't
prasadam.
say, who cares about them?
And all the people were waiting for me to start eating before
They're
they
just
ate.
idiots.
They're
that was
disobedient. They still have culture here.
They're this or that. No.
Actually,
You always give affection.
in some schools,
And that was Prabhupada's example. Because you see, yeah, we were rascals. and we
so
were
that-
stupid.
so they're saying
and
in
whatever.
Mexico,
still they do that in some schools.
But he didn't give up on
Students
us.
stand up. So that's
It's
where
because he
there's
didn't give
culture,
up on
there's
us,
respect
then
for elders.
we stopped being stupid rascals.
Seniors. Not because
He
they're
had faith in
qualified, but because they're elder.
We didn't really have a whole lot of faith in ourselves.
Better if they're qualified.
But through his faith and his tolerance of us,
So
and
that's
his
culture.
endlessly instructing us, that mercy.
So you
So
know,
that's
we see in Western
superior
culture,
always
especially
is giving
in
mercy.
America,
and
which
the
personifies
disciple,
Western
the
culture.
student may or may not follow.
There's very
but he
little
always gives
respect
it.
for elders, or less.
He just
It's
gives and
becoming
gives.
less.
Unless they reject him or reject his instructions, he'll keep giving it, even if they
Right.
can't follow it. The Prophet
Okay.
said they're more
So-
encouraged when they follow. When the student follows,
As I said,
Actually,
there's
the
a
teacher's
tendency
encouraged.
when you're dealing with the younger
that's the
devotees
position
that
of
you
the
can
superior.
exploit
Always
them,
giving, no matter what.
control them,
So that's
chastise
Prabhupada's
them.
example. Never stop
Why are
giving,
you eating
no
with your
matter
left hand,
what
you
problems there
malacha?
were in ISKCON, he never stopped giving.
It's got no culture. No matter how bad we were, he never stopped giving. As long as we were willing to listen.
I told you. Don't you have a brain?
So then the
Western
junior,
culture.
their duty
Yes.
is to hear.
And to
average
follow.
American and listen. Of
And
course,
serve.
Americans don't
talk about eating with
That's
the
the
left
idea.
hand,
You
but
serve your teacher. So there's that tendency.
It's in the Bhagavad
And it's a
Gita.
very
Sevaya.
bad tendency because approach the Guru and do sevaya.
Pranipata.
Devotee means
Fall
that
down
we
like
show
a stick.
affection. And do service.
Even if
and
we
then
chastise.
inquire.
It's only
And
because we
you're doing
love.
service. If I didn't
You
love
understand
I
what's
wouldn't
being
chastise
said.
you.
If you don't do
I'll
service,
just let you go to
don't
hell.
understand.
That's why
Right?
Krishna
That's
says
the idea.
sevaya.
It is.
Paripatena
So when
sevaya.
Prabhupada would
Not
chastise
just
someone,
Prashna. Not just asking.
not
You
the
ask
devotees weren't always
questions
happy.
and
They'd say,
then the Guru
Prabhupada,
speaks and you don't do anything. No,
when
but
you chastise us,
you're willing to render
what are we
service.
supposed to think?
That makes it perfect.
So
and then
scary
you
and
understand.
painful.
So that's the attitude of the
Prabhupada said you're
junior.
supposed to think there are
Billions of people serve the teacher
in the world.
You in India go
And
into
your
a
guru
class,
is
you're
giving
just
his
visiting
attention
a
to
class.
you.
All the kids will stand up. You're very fortunate. That's just the culture. Like we say, feasting and
I don't even
fasting
know
is the
you.
same.
Just
it's
a-
all for Krishna's
you're just
pleasure. An adult coming
the
to
Guru
visit their
chastises
class.
its mercy. He praises
Sometimes
its
in India,
mercy.
I would just walk
Shows
into
affection,
class
its mercy.
just because I thought it was fun. To be in some village.
'Cause he's
and
giving you
be
attention.
looking in the window. And
That's
come
good.
in and I walk in.
He could
They'll
avoid
all
you.
stand
He
up.
could ignore you.
So your guru gives you some attention. You fool! Why'd you do that? That's so you
Don't
know.
you have
That's
a
the
brain?
culture.
You're
Serve your
useless.
teacher. That's the culture.
Who wants to
Honor
hear
your
that?
teacher, like in my daughter's
least he's
school.
talking
there's a
to
big
you.
festival on the school principal's
He's taking
birthday.
time to talk to you.
Yeah, the whole school
Could
stops.
totally
and
avoid
just
you.
Do dances and dramas and cook a feast and eulogies.
Sometimes Prabhupada would say
That's
that
the
to
culture.
disciples who would mess up. He'd say,
You serve
you
the
are
superior.
useless.
And everyone has a superior and everyone has a junior. So everybody's serving and everyone's giving mercy.
So when a bona fide guru or bona fide teacher or bona fide
Unless
mother
you're,
or father,
one
when
day
they
old,
chastise, it's because
or 1 second old, you don't have a junior.
they
but
care.
If they didn't care, they wouldn't.
When
When
you
you become a
become
devotee,
devotee,
after a little while, someone else comes after you, then
Who cares?
they're your
Just
junior,
go.
and then you help them. Have fun. See in a few thousand lives. Yeah. So that's the idea.
Just because they care,
And then you befriend your
they'll
equals.
help you.
Right? So, so then Prabhupada
So we have to
explains
be
what's
careful.
the problem.
because there's such
problem
a
is
strong
that
tendency
material
to control,
tendency
and
will
you
be with
give somebody
juniors
little
to
power.
exploit them. Okay, Prabhu, you're Bhakta John, you're in charge of Bhakta Joe.
Equals to
'cause you
outdo
joined
them.
a half hour
And because you
earlier
become
than he
envious of
did.
equals
Because they're getting ahead.
Yeah, so Bhakta
We
John's
both joined
like,
at the
okay,
same time, and
Bhakta
so-and-so's taking
I'm in
sannyas,
charge
and
here.
I can
You
hardly
do what I
finish my
say.
ranks.
Okay, you
Because
got
become
that?
envious rather than happy.
You got
They're
that? All
advancing.
right, I'm in charge.
Because
You
they
heard.
become envious.
You're the temple president, right?
And then
I'm
naturally
in
the
charge.
superiors would disrespect them.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true.
Which is very
So
prominent.
that's
in
why I'm
Western
talking about
culture.
it, because it's true. Because
the
I've seen it
signature of
like a
Western
million
culture.
times. In the Hare
This is how you
Krishna
know
movement,
you've
of all
landed in
places,
the West.
right?
If they
You'd
blindfolded
think
you,
that's
when
where
got
you
on an
wouldn't see
airplane,
it, but you probably
you didn't
see
know
it
where
more
you
in
were
the Hare Krishna.
when you got out of the airplane. Just see how
Bhakta Joe
you
has
just
got
see how
seniority
seniors are
by 30
dealt with,
minutes
and you
over
know
Bhakta
if you're in
John,
the East
and
or
he's
you're in the West.
raising hell for Bhakta
Right?
John.
But yesterday, well, we had a program when like
Don't put your hand in your mouth.
Sunday. It was really nice. We were in
betcha.
Mexico here, and then we served prasadam.
Stop looking at the
All
women.
the people were waiting for me to start eating before they ate. That was nice.
Sridhar
We still
tells
have
a
culture
story
here.
that he was put in charge of some bhaktas when he was young, and he was just like driving them nuts. Telling them, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that,
Still-
don't
so
touch
the-
that, don't do that.
So they're saying in Mexico still they do
Yes.
that in some schools. Students stand up. So that's where there's culture, there's respect
Yes.
for elders, seniors. Not because they're qualified, but because they're elder. It's just better if they're qualified. But, So that's culture. So we see in Western culture, especially in America, which personifies Western culture. There's very little respect for elders, or less. It's becoming less. How did you feel? Okay, so
I feel sorry for her because I noticed she
there's
feels
as I said, there's a
disrespecting
tendency when you're dealing with the younger devotees that you can exploit them,
tell me that
control them,
context, no?
chastise
Yeah,
them.
right.
I haven't spoken with her.
Why are you eating with your left hand, you
It's
malacha?
it's a problem in our movement because we have an authority
Got no
structure.
culture.
So
I told you.
We want to follow the authority.
Don't you have a brain?
That's Western culture. It's hard to be an authority.
Yes.
Because sometimes
You're
nice
average
devotees,
American.
when they have
Of course,
authority,
Americans
they
don't talk about
because
eating with left hands, but
they don't always handle it as well. So
There's
there's
others.
that tendency, and it's a
That's
very
why we're
bad
talking about
tendency
this.
because
so I'm
devotee
talking
means
about this
that
from
we
the
show
perspective,
affection.
from your perspective. Like if you're given authority,
Even if we chastise, it's only because we love. And when you're given authority,
didn't
love you, I wouldn't chastise you. I'll just
Over
let you go to
somebody.
hell. You should be thinking, right? Now that I have authority, it is. So when
that means
Prabhupada
I
would
have to
chastise, show
someone.
more affection.
not.
The
That's
devotees
what
weren't always
authority
happy.
means, show
They'd say,
affection.
Prabhupada, mercy comes from down.
From top to down.
When you chastise,
you're
you're given
given
authority over someone. What are we supposed to think? And you're just chastising them. So scary and painful. Then you've misunderstood. Prabhupada says you're supposed to think there are millions, billions of people, right? So that's in the world. That's the real. And to me, that's the real thing. The real word is
giving his
affection.
attention to you.
Kindness and affection. You're very fortunate.
That's what's important.
Like we
that's the
say,
buzzword.
feasting and
Then you
fasting
get
is the
power.
same. It's all for Krishna's pleasure. That's good. You have
And the
power.
Guru now you can
Chastises,
show
it's
more
mercy. He
affection.
praises, it's mercy. Shows affection, it's mercy. You can show affection to more people because you have more power. Because he's giving you attention. So that's good. He could avoid you. He could ignore you. That's the understanding. So your Guru gives you some attention. You fool! Why'd you do that? Don't you have a brain? It's
You're
just
useless.
very difficult for some people. I think some
Who
people
wants to
shouldn't
hear
have
that?
authority. At least he's talking to you. Because then like he's taking
Like
time.
Alejandro's
Alejandro's saying, then they kind of expect that
the
totally
juniors will
avoid
respect
you. Then they might get offended if they're not coming to them for advice.
Sometimes Prabhupada would say that to disciples.
I
It would
mean,
mess
you know,
up.
I'm not saying
You
they
are
can't give you good
useless.
advice, and I'm not saying you shouldn't respect them and shouldn't come to them. But if you're an authority, so when a bona fide guru or bona fide teacher or bona fide mother or father, when they chastise, it's because people didn't respect Prabhupada. They care. Not everybody respected him. They'll let you go to hell. Let's speak of us, right? Who cares? Just go. Have fun. See you in a few thousand lives. As an authority, no. At least my experience is if it's because they care, affectionate, then it makes it easy for people to respect you. Like we were talking in the so we have to be careful in the workshop on because there's such a strong tendency to control, and you give somebody little power. Okay, Prabhu, you're Bhakta John, you're in charge of Bhakta Joe because you joined a half hour earlier than he did. So Bhakta John's like, okay, Bhakta Joe, I'm in charge. Not that people are just going to respect us because of our position. Okay, you got that? You got that? All right, I'm in charge. You heard, you're the temple president, right? I'm in charge. Research in corporations. Yeah, so they found that they have this thing called emotional intelligence. That's why I'm talking about it, because it's true. Because I've seen emotional intelligence is how you relate the Hare relationship, how good you are in relationships, right? You'd think that's where you wouldn't see it, but you probably see it. So they ask employees. Hare Krishna movement. Bhakta Joe has got seniority by 30 minutes. And the bosses who score high in emotional intelligence are always the ones everybody likes. Not just don't put your hand in your mouth. IQ.
You lecher.
Stop looking at the women. So if you like somebody, it's pretty easy to respect them. Vaisanava tells a story that they're kind to you. He was put in charge of some bhaktas when he was young, and he was just like driving them nuts. So telling,
don't do that.
You have stories of
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada,
Don't touch
like
that.
female devotees tell that somehow they were walking in, and Prabhupada was walking in, and Prabhupada would say, no, you go first. Yes. Or he'd open the door, let somebody in. It's not that we shouldn't think that, okay, because someone has a position, they're not a gentleman anymore. So here's my license to not be a gentleman because, I'm in charge here. It's like, Krishna consciousness is not like we're in the army.
Private! Don't look at me that way. You want to stay with us? Don't blink when I hit you.
How did you feel? Not like that. You're disrespecting him. Yeah. That's not Krishna consciousness. Now,
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so then it brings up another problem. It's a problem,
and I'll give
in
an
our
example
because
from
we
this
have an
morning's
authority
kirtan.
structure. Like,
So, if I sing a melody you're not familiar with,
we want to follow the authority.
you kind of go to the melody that you're familiar with and sing that one, and you think that's
it's hard
the
to
one
be
I'm
an
singing
authority
because that's all you can
because
relate to.
Sometimes nice devotees,
You think, well, it sounds like
when
the
they
other
have
melody.
authority,
So even though
because
it's not that melody,
they
it must
don't
be.
always handle it as well.
So
as
that's
others.
what, so you naturally
That's why
sing
we're
the
talking
other
about
one
this.
you know.
So, right?
I'm
So the
talking
same way you
about
come
this
to
from
Krishna
the
consciousness,
perspective.
from your perspective, like if you're
And, you know,
given
and the
authority.
philosophy says it's like this.
And when you're given
you kind
authority
of do what you do. It kind of seems like that.
over
You just
somebody,
kind of
you should
drive
be
it!
thinking,
because that's
now
what
that
you
I have
do.
authority,
Philosophy says, okay, your authority, take care
that
of
means
these
I have
people.
to
Show more.
show
That's how you
affection.
take care of people. You slap them in the face.
that's what authority
Philosophy
is.
doesn't say slap them in the face.
Mercy
That's
comes
just
from
what you
down,
do. From top to down.
That's the problem.
So when you're given authority over someone,
yes,
and you're just chastising them,
Here and she gave a conference, and she asked
then you've
everyone
misunderstood.
to see what their answer is. What's more
Right? So
important?
that's the real. That, to me, that's a real thing. The real word is affection, kindness and affection.
and what did everyone
That's what's
ask?
important. That's the buzzword. When you get power, the leader said the organization.
That's good. You have
Everybody
power
else
now.
now you can show more affection. Timothy was saying when Irmila was here, she said she asked a question:
show
what's more
affection
important, the
to
organization?
more people,
or because you have
people.
more power. The organization only exists as a vehicle for bhakti.
That's the understanding.
Association.
Now,
So, the people are most important, obviously. It's just very difficult for some people. I
Bhakti
think some
is
people shouldn't have authority.
why the organization
Because-
exists.
because-
So bhakti is even
Because
more,
then they
is
then
as
like,
equally important.
like Alejandro's saying, then they kind of expect that
So
the juniors
this is
will
a very
respect
good point.
them. Because
And they might get offended.
we have a
if they're
mission,
not
right?
Coming to them for
So we're all
advice.
working together.
I
Here
mean,
we
you
have
know,
our soldiers.
not- I'm
You
not
can see
saying
them
they
in the
can't give you
mirror.
good advice, and I'm not
Our
saying you
soldiers
shouldn't
are-
respect them. And shouldn't
So
come
we're
to them.
sending out our soldiers.
But if you're
to fight
an
with Maya.
authority, you just can't expect that
So,
everyone's going to
as
respect
when
you
you're a
because they're
leader,
supposed to.
There's always a tendency
Even people didn't respect Prabhupada.
to see them
Not everybody
as
respected
workers.
him.
not as people.
Let's speak of us.
It's interesting. Because
But
your guru will tend to
as an
see
authority,
you more as a person.
At least my
And the
experience is
manager
if
will
you're,
tend to see you more as a worker.
if you're affectionate,
And sometimes there's conflict.
and it makes it easy
But
for
in the
people to
days when
respect you.
Prabhupada was the only
Like we were
guru,
talking in the
then
in the
a lot of
in the
devotees were
workshop
seen as
on
workers.
Grihastha life.
And then because there were so many
That
gurus, the gurus
if a
are in charge of
husband
devotee spiritual life.
is
so
respectful
they're very concerned about the
and he
devotee.
listens to his wife, she'll naturally
So
respect
they
him
would
and
often have
listen
to
to him.
intervene.
That's just
If
human
the manager
psychology.
wasn't, careful with how he was dealing with devotees.
So,
So,
it's not that people are just
to
going to
rephrase
respect
what
us because of
Ormala
our
said,
position.
I always say the relationship is most important.
You know, they
Not,
did
not accomplishing the goal, but the
they
relationship.
did,
Because if
research
accomplish the goal
in
and burn everybody
corporations.
out.
And they
What's
found
the
that they have this thing called emotional intelligence.
Hey, we brought all these people into this horrible
And
organization where
emotional
everybody's
intelligence
fried
is how you relate.
because we burned
in
everybody out
relationship.
getting
How
you
good
to
you are
come
to
in.
Right? And so they ask employees
See?
about
So my feeling
bosses.
is, at least for me, my
the
meditation
bosses
is,
who score high in
as a-
emotional intelligence
as a whatever
are
I
always
am,
the
as
ones
a
everybody likes.
teacher, as a somewhat of a leader, organizer.
Not just the
My
ones that have
meditation
high
is always
IQ.
to create an environment where everybody's happy, because that will, that
So if
is
you
important
like
for all
somebody,
of us.
pretty
And that will
easy to
naturally
respect
attract
them.
other people,
isn't it?
because other people aren't happy.
It's natural.
And if we're
They're
working
kind to
well
you.
together and we're happy,
You respect them.
then when they hang out with us, they'll also be happy.
So
Then we take
you
care
have
of
stories
them.
of Prabhupada, like devotees,
So
female
leadership
devotees
means take
tell
care
that
of people.
somehow they were walking in and
What do you need?
Prabhupada was walking in.
And be
Prabhupada
aware.
said, "No, you
Be
go
aware
first."
that,
Or he'd open the door. let
you know,
somebody
like
in.
a good leader,
It's not
he's
that
just
we
aware
shouldn't
in
think that,
advance
okay,
of
because someone has a
of
situation, they're not a
that's-
gentleman
that
anymore.
may be difficult.
Here's my
So they'll ask
license
and say, is it
to not
okay?
be a
Is this
gentleman
difficult?
because I'm in
You
charge
need
here.
something. Will you be able to do this?
It's like, he just
Krishna
knows.
consciousness
consciousness is
That's
not
how a
like
good
we're
leader
in the
will think.
army.
Because he cares about people.
Private! Don't look at me that way. You want to stay with us?
That's the right consciousness. So we're, if you're
Don't
a leader,
blink when I hit
you're
you.
a senior, you're just a servant. It's not like that. Don't ever think it's your chance to enjoy, because you have people who do whatever you want. But you're always a servant. Yeah. Prabhupada said that. I always see myself as a servant of my disciples. Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada sees himself as a servant. What to speak of us? Okay, so then it brings up another problem. And I'll give an example from this morning's kirtan. Every devotee practically in ISKCON, like when Prabhupada was here, if I sing a melody you're not familiar with, Prabhupada said, jump off the Empire State Building. You kind of go to the melody that you're familiar with and sing that one. Or at least they would give serious consideration. I'm singing, because that's all you can relate to. They would do anything. Because he saved it sounds like the other melody, so even though it's not that melody, it must be. So that's what. So you naturally sing the other one you know, right? No. So in the same way, you come to anyone to do anything for his sense gratification, and and the philosophy says it's like this. For the service of Krishna, and you kind of do what was beneficial for them. It kind of seems like that. You just kind of private leader, because that's what you do. And whenever Prabhupada says, "Okay, your authority, take care of these people." Had too many things. He would just. So that's how you take care of people. You got a new sweater. Oh, here's the old one. The philosophy doesn't say slap them in the face. That's just what you do. So that's the problem. Leaders always giving. Give, give. And why did everybody surrender to Prabhupada? Because he's giving, giving, giving. That's why. So you're taking. You want to give. And what did everyone? You know the story of the sun and the wind. So the sun and leader said the organization, and everybody else. There was a man. Timothy was saying, "Take off the man's jacket." Irmela was here. She said, she asked a question: "What's more important, the organization?" So the wind went first, and the wind blew. The organization only exists to blow the jacket off as a vehicle for Bhakti Association. So 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour. His hair is flying back. Bhakti is his shirt. Why the organization exists? So Bhakti is holding on to his jacket. And the harder the wind blows, the more he holds on. So this is a very good point. It was the sun's turn, because the sun just turned. We have a mission, right? 75. So we're all working together. Fahrenheit, about 22. Here we have our soldiers. You can see them. He took his jacket off. Well, our soldiers here. So we're sending out our soldiers. That was easy. To fight with Maya. So when you're a leader, there's always a tendency when you show affection to people, they want to reciprocate as workers. And when you're like the wind, they're just going to hold on to their jacket. It's interesting. Right. So because your guru will tend to see you more as a person. That new bhakta who's given charge of another bhakta, a worker. And sometimes there's if he is not. But in the days when Prabhupada was, that's just the way the only guru. It's just what he brought. And a lot of devotees were seen as workers. And then because there were so many gurus, we have to educate devotees in charge of devotees in this way, so they know. They're very concerned about the devotee. It's all about relationship. It's all about encouragement. So they would often have to intervene. If the manager wasn't careful with how he was dealing with devotees. I was having a discussion with one of my godbrothers. He's a guru. To rephrase what Ormala said, I forget what we were discussing. I always say the relationship is most important. Qualifications of a guru. Not accomplishing the goal, but the relationship. Because if you accomplish the goal and burn everybody out, what's most important? What's the point? And I said, for me, we brought all